For almost 300 years, ancient Egypt was the most advanced civilization in the Mediterranean region. The primary sources of details regarding ancient Egypt are from the innumerable treasures and artifacts discovered in modern-day Egypt. Every one of the artifacts gives archaeologists a greater comprehension of this old civilization. However, concurrently, it additionally highlights unresolved issues and puzzles that have not yet been solved. The Egyptian wealth and distinctiveness of civilization has captivated and fascinated archaeologists and historians for centuries. So much so that they even developed a unique word for people who are enthusiastic specialists in this area: Egyptologists. Come along with us as we investigate the ancient Egypt's riddles in the modern video. But first, remember to like and please sign up so you may participate in our notification team. The ship of Khufu first, the ship of Khufu. Each and every excavation is an enigma. You never know what you will discover. Who could have thought that archaeologists might find a huge ship nearly flawlessly kept and in fantastic condition at the time of the excavation in 1954, close to the Giza Pyramid complex? The Khufu ship's discovery is considered to be among the best accomplishments in the field of Egyptian archaeology. A total of 1,200 sections of the vessel were discovered and meticulously put back together. After it was finished, the ship became a magnificent work of art, about 143 feet long and over 20 feet in width. The vessel was repaired without the application of a single nail. Additionally, in accordance with specialists, the historic ship and design craftsmanship of the structure was impeccable. The ship was still capable of sailing the Nile River today. The ship Khufu has endured over time, enduring for over 4,600 years, despite the fact that we remain unsure of the ship's actual goal. A few Egyptologists as well as archaeologists have put forth a number of ideas supported by the evidence at hand. Experts say that it is extremely likely the Khufu ship was probably a solar bark, a boat. In the ancient Egyptian legend, these warships were utilized by Ra, the sun god, to journey with him into the sky. The former rulers of Egypt's solar boats were also utilized as emblems in Egypt of Ra on the planet. But these vessels weren't designed for land travel or at sea. Rather, they were mostly designed to accompany the monarchs in the afterlife. Even so, the Khufu ship displays indications that it was utilized in water. The vessel was most likely used to transport the body of Pharaoh Khufu from Memphis to Giza, is comparable to a holy pilgrimage ship. Among the most fascinating hypotheses on the ship's idea is that it might contain the solution to the enigma surrounding the pyramid's construction. This ship has an asymmetrical layout, and this distinctive characteristic enabled it to lift large stone blocks. What do you believe to be the actual purpose of the Khufu ship? The pharaoh in silver. The silver pharaoh was number 2. The third Egyptian pharaoh was Susanai of Dynasty 21. Even now, it continues to be unknown how long he ruled Egypt. However, what he left behind after passing away could be the puzzle's missing piece in the history of Egypt. Some claim that Egyptologists, who have found the royal tomb of Pharaoh Susan, have found it to be even more astounding than Tutankhamun's. In 1940, his tomb was dug up, but Tanis was where this mausoleum was situated, in the arid environment of Lower Egypt led to the majority of the wooden artifacts being seriously harmed. However, his mausoleum is still among the most intact ever found, displaying no indications of having been plundered, in contrast to Tutankhamun's tomb had experienced 2 robberies. One of the most outstanding items among the tomb's artifacts are the king's mask composed of red deep and gold lapis lazuli in blue. The actual pharaoh was buried in a coffin made of silver. Most people would think that gold was constantly more precious than silver. However, in ancient Egypt, a casket made of silver was incredibly uncommon, since silver was far more challenging to acquire than gold. Various temples' inscriptions show that during the majority of Egyptian history, silver was said to be worth more than gold, particularly during Egypt's time of decline. No other casket made of silver has ever been discovered in addition to Susanai's. Despite archaeologists' ability to discover a great deal about the king's afterlife, very little is known about his rule. According to recent studies, Susan reigned as a cunning politician. Egypt was at one of its most enigmatic eras, the third intermediate phase. At that time, Egypt was split into 2 conflicting authorities, the high priests in the pharaohs in the south, who had been driven to Tanis in the north. Even though his precise reign cannot be verified, however, it is believed that Susan had controlled Tanis for almost 40 years, whereas King Tutankhamun had only reigned for just 10. As a result, Susan is regarded as an exceptional leader who was able to accumulate substantial fortune, obviously displayed in the opulence of his grave. But there are still a lot of mysteries that encircle his family. Unique pets. Thirdly, unique pets. If you're familiar with ancient Egypt, you are undoubtedly aware of how much this advanced society admired felines. The ancient Egyptians held the view that cats were magical animals with the ability to bring luck to those who fed and looked after them. As a result, cats were the most prized of all pets. They were given particular attention from everyone. Even royalty would give their felines special treats. And after they passed away, cats were, like humans, mummified. A few cats were even buried in their owners' burial chambers. This fact is further corroborated by the innumerable wall paintings and monuments discovered in the tombs of ancient Egypt, where cats seem to be the perfect example of the goddess Bastet. But the Egyptians did not keep their respect for cats to themselves. Archaeologists have found countless remnants of odd and uncommon ancient Egyptian animals. It appears that in addition to keeping cats, Egyptians also had a few rather exotic pets. Just as today, an uncommon or rare animal was a representation of wealth and authority. While excavating a graveyard close to the Nile River, archaeologists were shocked to find the fossilized remnants of hippos, baboons, and even crocodiles. Imagine the peril and difficulty it had to be to keep animals like that. Monkeys may have been controllable, but taking care of apex predators like crocodiles would have been a remarkable accomplishment. As stated by archaeologists, the majority of these animals were probably offered as sacrifices following their owner's death. The unidentified black fluid. Fourth, the enigmatic dark fluid. Numerous mummies that have recently been found have been discovered drenched in an odd black liquid. The 19th and 22nd dynasties mummies of historic Egypt were all exposed to this peculiar custom. One of them was a priest dedicated to the sun deity, Ra, who was encased in fine linen and covered completely with a thick coating of dark material. Researchers started to wonder what this enigmatic liquid was composed of, and it required a lot of attempt to examine it. Examining a liquid that has endured for thousands of years is not a simple task. Hundreds of samples were gathered for examination in a lab. The findings indicated that the majority of the material was made up of plant oils, tree resin, and animal fats. But this isn't the complete inventory of ingredients because certain parts might have already broken down over time. This dark fluid was additionally applied to some sculptures discovered in King Tutankhamun's tomb. The precise cause of why the ancient Egyptians used this dark liquid is uncertain. According to one theory, it was employed to discourage tomb robbers because only the elite's mummies were covered in the material. According to another view, it was one of the strategies used to keep the deceased and their belongings safe in the next life. But all of this is still conjecture. The mud-coated mummy. Number 5. The mud-covered mummy. The procedure of mummification for pharaohs and the nobility of Egypt was a complex, intricate, and costly process needing a lot of expensive resources to make it possible for the deceased to prosper in the next life. One of the many mummies that have been discovered, researchers studying Egypt and archaeology have examined and painstakingly recorded the various mummification techniques in the past. Thus, they were actually shocked to learn of the mummy covered in mud. Rather than being deposited in a sarcophagus as usual, this mummy was covered in mud. This is a first for the mortuary industry, documented in the records of archaeology from ancient Egypt. Why was this mummy covered in mud instead of resin? One theory states that the mud shell was developed to protect the body after it was broken. Additionally, the age of the mud casing did not correspond with the body. It was decided that the mummy would date to approximately 1207 BC and displayed indications of being harmed after passing away. The casket, meanwhile, was intended for a woman who passed away much later, indicating that the corpse might have been changed because of an old tomb robbery. However, the reality of this is still a big mystery. Ancient cheese. Would you be brave enough to consume a food that's older than 3,200 years? It's precisely that. What is ancient cheese? Initially, the archaeologists were completely perplexed when they discovered a sizable solid ivory mass within a jar in Tom's tomb, an important figure in ancient Egypt. When researchers examined the composition of this substantial bulk, they found that it was the oldest cheese they had discovered in the entire world. Even while it's not formally known by such name, this finding is important since it's the first proof that the ancient Egyptians were able to produce cheese. Additional analysis shown that the ingredients used to make this cheese were goats and sheep's milk. If that's the situation, the cheese had to have been extremely tart. But because of the lengthy chapter throughout time, researchers also discovered evidence of brucellosis causing bacteria, a harmful illness that can be transmitted from animal to human through dairy items that haven't been pasteurized. If this is accurate, then researchers have not only found the oldest cheese in the world, but the oldest bimolecular proof of a fatal illness. Golden-tongued mummies. The seventh is mummies with golden tongues. The archaeologists have found mummies that were 2,000 years old with golden tongues inserted within their mouths in Egypt's north. While the mummies themselves were in poor health despite being restored, they received a gold amulet in the form of a tongue. For a while, archaeologists didn't know why at the time. These mummies weren't kept in a gold, but nevertheless got such a significant amulet. According to one view, the placement of these golden tongues was so that the deceased might communicate with the court of the god of resurrection, Osiris, and the afterlife's death. In Egyptian, Osiris was formerly the god of fertility, and subsequently rose to become the ruler of the underworld and the judge of souls. How do you feel about these odd findings? Which one left the largest impact on you? Are you aware of any further mysteries of archaeology that have been discovered lately? Get out your ideas in the space provided for comments below, and remember to look at the other amazing videos that show up on your screen. See you in the upcoming video. I hope everyone has a wonderful day.